You're watching Truth Talk News.
The federal income tax. Everyone loves this. It's funny that everyone's waiting to get their refunds, those that'll get them, and everyone who's paying them is waiting till April 15th because they want to delay the pain. But this is the month that the criminal cartel hijacked our government back in 1913. So it was 100 years. This includes automatic withholding, the IRS, and filing tax forms by April 15th are just a way of life now. In fact, it's likely that most Americans are unaware that prior to 100 years ago, there was no federal income tax. That's right. And with the exception of a short period during the Civil War, which has helped to finance the battles, it all goes back down to this whole idea of communism and a progressive income tax and a central bank. Two of the main planks of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Just fact. In 1848, Karl Marx declared in his Communist Manifesto that a progressive tax on personal income was one of the 10 essential measures to ensure a communist revolution in an advanced country in order to bring about his fabled classless society. Socialist and communist ideas gained momentum in many parts of Europe, and it wasn't long before they reached America. Various attempts to impose a progressive federal income tax, making the rich pay. It's always like, we're going to make the rich pay. It's always like what they're going to do. We're going to tax the rich, tax the rich. They're just stealing the money and collectivizing and buying all our property and controlling all the corporations and getting us to believe what they want us to believe when we watch television and buy the products they want us to buy and believe the issues they want us to believe the way they want us to believe it. The Revenue Act of 1861 was a federal income tax used to raise funds for the Civil War. It was a flat tax of 3% on annual income above $800, which was, I guess, I don't know, probably a lot of money back then. The following year, this was replaced by a graduated progressive tax. From there, 3 to 5% above $600 in the Revenue Act of 1862, which ended in 1866, so they stopped taxing. Now, even though these were, of course, also unconstitutional, as they were a part of income rather than being apportioned. But the movement continued to impose a progressive federal income tax, and it continued. The Socialist Labor Party advocated the graduated income tax in 1887, and the Populist Party demanded the same in an 1892 platform. The Populist Party, led by central bank proponent William Jennings Bryan, advocated the income tax law passed by a Democrat-led Congress in 1894. This was the first peacetime income tax with a rate of 2% on income over $4,000, an amount that few people made those days. The following year, 1895, the Supreme Court ruled that the tax was unconstitutional in the Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company. Okay, in order to enact this progressive federal income tax in America, or a socialist idea, the citizens and the legislature had to be convinced that it was in the best interest of the people. This is a common theme, like they're doing now, like they did with Obamacare, okay, which is going to bankrupt America. Not to mention take away our rights and turn into like, really like a Nazi-style, euthanasia campaign against the elderly. That's what it's going to end up being as these baby boomers age into their Social Security and their Medicare needs. I digress, I'm sorry. So anyway, the reason that they did this was to be in the best interest of the people. And it's not different than what they're doing about today, but the year 1913 was part of the progressive era in our nation's history. Populists and progressives, essentially socialists, feared the concentration of wealth and power in a few private hands, a concern that eclipsed the earlier fear of the founders of too much wealth and power centered in the hands of a central government. Even before Roosevelt's Progressive Party of the 1912 election, there were progressives in both the Republican and Democratic Party who ostensibly wanted to put more power into the hands of the people, acting through their representative government by taking it away from the robber barons and other malefactors of great wealth. For by this point, there were vast fortunes that had been amassed by the titans of industry, such as the Rockefellers, Carnegies, and the Vanderbilts, wealth and power to be concentrated into the hands of fewer and fewer people at the top. This offered a perfect excuse to institute a progressive tax with the idea that it would soak the rich. Of course, it doesn't. It ends up destroying the middle class. Interestingly enough, the progressive income tax was originally backed strongly by the rich themselves. Senator Nelson Aldrich of Rhode Island, for example, a man widely known to be John D. Rockefeller's inside man in the Senate, was a principal proponent of the federal progressive income tax made legal by amendment to the Constitution. Of course he was. It's all part of the scheme with the Warburgs and the Rothschild family. This is not surprising because the progressives who championed the income tax claimed it would be a tax on the rich and it would help the little guy. This is how it always does. But does the little guy ever get help? No. We always know the little guy gets the shit end of the stick. How many generations have to go through this? It's been 100 years. Right? Isn't it time to wake up, sheeple? Awaken to the tyranny that we are under and fight to stop it through honest legislation, honest legislators. What's happening in Bulgaria is awesome. We should fire the entire Congress, impeach the president, and start a grassroots government where you can't be one of these oligarchs, one of these people that are controlling all these big corporations. No. If you earn more than $50,000 a year, you're not in contention. And let's see what an honest, hardworking, American would do for this country in 4 years that these criminals, which would siphon us and put us further into slavery and debt, keep continuing to do. You think it'd be worse? Let's vote for Robbie Wells in 2016, independent candidate for president. Check him out, RobbieWells2016.com. We need to change. This is a horrible, horrible burden on the American people, and it's going to get worse. And the situation is so wide and vast because they are deindustrializing this country, and that is the intention. Make no doubt about it. The Department of Education needs to be abolished. There's just so many horrible things. The true wealth and security of the nation is its people's intelligence and ability to be an individual, and they want us all to be part of this collective, and a dumbed down collective that does what they tell us to do. And the individual thinker, the one that can, that they speak of, we need this. Obama saying we need to have the next Thomas Edisons and all these other and then they put these kids up there like Zuckerberg and these others that with Facebook and all these young kids, the truth is they're individualists and all of that, but they're part of the system here. Now, they're not saying that you should be one too. They don't want you to be one. They want you to try to be one, but you're never going to be one. You're not going to want to be one, because you're going to be so distracted by all the blah you put in front of your face. 2,000 commercials, advertisements you see a day, and wherever you are, people even on your phones, your cell phones. They give you messages and just try to sell you stuff. It's all about buy, sell, but we don't make anything. There's no manufacturing. Our country's doomed. Anybody with a brain realizes you cannot have a service society. You cannot thrive. We don't make anything anymore. And these liars are saying that we're going to be producing, we're going to be stopping these loopholes. Why didn't you stop these loopholes in the first 4 years, Obama? The next president's going to say the same thing. And why do these loopholes continue? Because this is what they're doing through the Council on Foreign Relations. This is where it all stems from. And their relationship with our State Department. And yes, that's right, Skull and Boner, John Kerry, Secretary of State. So we're standing at the same spot 100 years later that we were at with the Federal Reserve being founded, now that it's 100 years out. But now there are people that are awake and realize, many more people understand, this never would have gotten passed with the intelligence of humanity at this point due to the awakening that the internet has helped. And that's why people like Jay Rockefeller want to shut down the internet and have all these restraints, because the truth is out there. They can't keep their lies as covered up. There are thousands of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people doing exactly what I'm doing, waking people up for no other reason other than to give them the information and let them think and be individuals and research every word I say. Find your own truth. There's only one truth. That's the truth. Seek and ye shall find it. These criminals have hijacked our government, and this is how it happened. So 100 years ago, with these progressives, and they think that they're going to tax the wealthy, now they set up all these foundations. But the truth is that they use trusts and tax-exempt foundations to escape much of the tax burden, but they put it on the people. Banking and government, of course, was now in bed, and the difference between the propaganda and the reality was incredible. Populism championed by the progressives and the populists were, as they were portrayed, share the wealth program, but it was a control the wealth program. Under the guise of helping the little guy, the elites worked hard to implement an income tax. In keeping with that ideology of the primary backers, the new income tax was to be a progressive tax, one of which the tax rate increases as the taxable base income increases, and that's the way what we have. So we have this system that takes property, that takes wealth from people, has ruined people's lives. People that we put in hell dear. Joe Lewis was ruined by the IRS. There's countless people. Red Fox, many of them, celebrities that we all looked at, as sheeple. At least I was. And you look at these people as being something special or whatever. You think of it, but you realize then it's all this pop cultural mind control. But I'm digressing. But yeah, these people were ruined by the IRS. It's unbelievable what this organization, and it's a private corporation. It is not part of our government. The money doesn't even go to our government. Check out the Grace Commission report, 1981, commissioned by Ronald Reagan. I'm not exactly sure if it was before he was shot or after he was shot, but they certainly wanted to shoot him after doing that. And they found out that every dollar that the IRS collects went to pay interest on our debt. Look it up. It's the truth. So every dollar that the IRS collects goes to pay interest on the debt. Then they borrow more money to pay for everything. This is how it works. This is why we're being driven into the ground with this worthless paper. In 1910, New York Governor Charles Evan Hughes opposed the income tax amendment. While he supported the idea of a federal income tax, Hughes believes the words "from whatever source derived" in the proposed amendment implied the federal government would have the power to tax the state and municipal bonds. He believed this would excessively centralize government power and make it impossible for the state to keep any property. Good move, but whatever. Support for the amendment did not relent. All three candidates in the 1912 presidential election, progressive, were Bull Moose candidate Teddy Roosevelt, Republican William Howard Taft, and Democrat Woodrow Wilson supported the tax. So it was going through no matter what. The ratification was complete on February 3rd, 1913. The Revenue Act of 1913 was enacted shortly thereafter to impose a new progressive tax, but it was a far cry from the tax burden that Americans face today. Annual incomes below $20,000, or about $460,000 in today's currency, so was taxed at 1%, with an exemption of $3,000 or nearly $70,000 in today's dollars. Many Americans effectively paid no federal income tax, so that was like a super tax, right? Which was really instituted to soak the rich as an additional 1% on the successive income brackets over $20,000. Thus, an individual earning $500,000, which is like $11 million today, would effectively pay a 7% federal income tax. All right, if that was the way it would be great, but it wasn't really to do that. That was the deception. They again followed this through with really keeping this in place until the war. Moving forward ahead with this, what people fear the most is that this, this mafia-like, Stasi-like organization known as the IRS takes property from you because of a swindle. We've been swindled, ladies and gentlemen. We have to take back our republic. We have to end the Federal Reserve. We have to print our own currency. We have to cancel all this fraudulent debt and put these criminals in jail. I mean, their main bankers are laundering drug money. And we put people in jail. More people, instead of putting people in jail, put people into true education, like Jefferson. It's talking about Jefferson. I'm Howard Nima. Thank you for watching Truth Talk News. His fabled classless society. Socialist and communist ideas gained momentum in many parts of Europe, and it wasn't long before they reached America. Various attempts to impose a progressive federal income tax, making the rich pay. It's always like, we're going to make the rich pay. It's always like what they're going to do. We're going to tax the rich, tax the rich. They're just stealing the money and collectivizing and buying all our property and controlling all the corporations and getting us to believe what they want us to believe when we watch television and buy the products they want us to buy and believe the issues they want us to believe the way they want us to believe it. The Revenue Act of 1861 was a federal income tax used to raise funds for the Civil War. It was a flat tax of 3% on annual income above $800, which was, I guess, I don't know, probably a lot of money back then. The following year, this was replaced by a graduate in 1913. So it was 100 years. This includes automatic withholding, the IRS, and filing tax forms by April 15th are just a way of life now. In fact, it's likely that most Americans are unaware that prior to 100 years ago, there was no federal income tax. That's right. And with the exception of a short period during the Civil War, which has helped to finance the battles, it all goes back down to this whole idea of communism and a progressive income tax and a central bank. The two of the main planks of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Just fact. In 1848, Karl Marx declared in his Communist Manifesto that a progressive tax on personal income was one of the 10 essential measures to ensure a communist revolution in an advanced country in order to bring about.
You're watching Truth Talk News.
The federal income tax. Everyone loves this. It's funny that everyone's waiting to get their refunds, those that'll get them, and everyone who's paying them is waiting till April 15th because they want to delay the pain. But this is the month that the criminal cartel hijacked our government. Back in